Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, do you notice anything different about me? Anything new, Tony?
Tom, I see perhaps some new swag that we finally, or at least you finally got from the Rose Bowl.
Yes, I don't know if you can see on the camera there. If you're watching on YouTube, yes, we got our Rose Bowl media gifts. Those are typically handed out at the game. You will periodically see us wearing a Cheez-It Bowl pullover or Fiesta Bowl pullover or something from some previous Ohio State postseason trip. And as Tony, as you may have heard, there are some supply chain issues around this great world of ours right now. So it just 10 minutes before we hit record on this arrived. Yours has not arrived. And I thought, well, I could do the kind thing and wait until his arrives so that I don't appear to be taunting him, because I wouldn't want him to think that I was taunting him. And then I thought, but I want to wear it. It's puffy. It's fun. So, Tony, I like it. It's I'm happy. I'm happy that we have finally made this happen for me, and maybe Tony someday your Rose Bowl puffy vest dreams will come true too.
They very well may come true. I can tell you, I will not be wearing a puffy vest in the summer. Even in an air-conditioned house, I'm just going to leave that for cooler temps. I don't need to shove it in people's faces. Look at what I have. I have a vest. Like, I'm not that kind of person. See my vest. See my vest.
Look at how cold I can make my house during the summer. I'm going to have to run the temperature. Like, you know how if you stay in a hotel, it's like, well, I'm not, anyone who is in male over the age of about 25 has an automatic, aversion to a high electric bill. But man, when I'm in a hotel, that air conditioner goes down to about 58 degrees because I want to sleep like a meat locker. I'm going to have to keep my house like that to be able to wear the vest. But Tony, until yours comes, I think it's worth it.
And your wife will be like, Tom, it's a waste of money. And you'll be like, no, the vest was free. I didn't have to pay for it.
And also, I can't tell you how badly this is annoying Tony right now that he doesn't know whether his vest has come yet or not.
And I can't go check. I mean, and here, a porch pirate could stop by at any moment and see, oh, I wonder, could that be a Rose Bowl vest? And I'll be like, oh no, they know. And then they get home and they're surprised. It was a Rose Bowl vest, as I would expect on May the whatever that we are on this the 18th. This is when bowl swag arrives.
Not only Rose Bowl season, but vest season as well. Yes, that is when I think May, I think Rose Bowl. But yes, it is. It is here. It is nice. I like it. We enjoy our bowl swag around here. I am wearing a cotton bowl hat. If you can see that, that was from one of our earlier bowl trips. I just wear a bunch of clothes that people just give me. So, I mean, that's basically, when you're married, that's basically how it works. Your wife just hands you clothes and says, wear this. So it's like, all right, well, this is someone else's wife, but I mean, they handed me the clothes. I guess I have to wear them.
It is good to see that the supply chain issues have been fixed. Tom, it's going to be in the 90s in Ohio this weekend. It's a good thing your vest does not have sleeves. Growing up in the 80s, the only vests I did have, the unzipped kind, that you could then, your vest turns into a winter coat. I don't think I've had a vest since then. Tom, when will the sleeves arrive?
That is a good question. But until then, I guess in addition to turning my air conditioning down, which is bad for my wallet, I guess I also need to take up smoking so I can roll up a pack of smokes in my sleeves, which then it's like, well, I don't want to wear the sleeves because of my lung darts, Tony, my heaters. As I so frequently say, have to have perpetual access to my lung darts. So,
Tom, we will eventually get to the show, but just a suggestion. Like a pair of pants, pair of jeans that you're not using, you're not wearing at the moment, or don't plan to wear any longer, you can cut those legs off, sew them onto your arms, and make the sleeves out of and now you've got like, it's puffy, but also denim.
It's, yes, that's for the Canadian Rose Bowl media gift. Yes. If you cover the gray cup, that's what they give you. But, that doesn't stay true to my Southern California roots. So, well, I mean, I had very brief roots earlier this year for just about a week.
All right. Tom, thank you for letting everybody know about your vest situation. People can now rest easily Certainly, they can also rest more easily, Tom, with the news that came out today about some contract extension for some Ohio State head coaches. 5 coaches have had their contracts extended, or at least it's on the board of trustees' agenda to then approve these contract extensions. The first for Ryan Day, we'll get to his numbers in a bit. Chris Holtmann, extension. Kevin McGuff, women's basketball coach, extension. Nick Myers, the lacrosse coach, extension. Steve Rohlik, men's hockey coach, extension. They should, I don't know what the contract situation is of the women's hockey coach, Tom, but if you win a national championship, shouldn't you get an extension?
Yeah, I suspect Nadine Meserol's job status is pretty secure right now, running the women's hockey program. I don't know if she got a bump last year or not. I can't remember what her contract status is, but yes, I'm sure if she would like to stick around, Ohio State would be happy to have her stick around as well. But and that's true of Ryan Day as well. Ryan Day is coming off of a year when it was a very atypical Ohio State year, in as much as they did not beat Michigan, they did not win the Big Ten, and I think people are looking at that as a horrendous disaster, and he's 1 year away from being fired and all that kind of stuff. And this is, I think, a little bit of a no, not necessarily. Like that was a little bit of an outlier year, and he's had a couple of years in a row that were kind of outlier years in a number of different ways. 2020 for obvious reasons, and 2021 they had a very, very young team. So that's he is. I think this is more than anything else to me. This tells me that Gene Smith is very comfortable with the direction of the Ohio State football program. This was actually something that I had floated back in February, something like that I had heard, like, hey, they are kind of chatting about this, and they have they're in agreement on a nice bump and a nice, not massive. This is not, he's not getting Jimbo Fisher money, but he's, a nice bump there. And he and Gene Smith are very much in alignment on the football program, the direction of the football program, what they want it to be, all that kind of stuff. That, to me, I mean, if you were an Ohio State fan at home, it doesn't necessarily matter to you that Ryan Day is getting an extra couple $1 million a year. I mean, he is a nice guy. Everyone seems to like him, and that is wonderful. And I'm sure he will do nice things with the money. But if you're an Ohio State fan, I think that this tells me a couple of things. Number one, they want to, they like him and they want to keep him around. Number two, there is a shared vision for the program that, there's a little bit of a bigger picture thinking, I think, here, where you're not just looking at, well, they lost to Michigan, so therefore he's bad and therefore he needs to be on the hot seat. I think Gene Smith sees the big picture. They're getting, they're bringing in the players they want to bring in. Ryan Day is not being very stubborn and sticking to his guns like Kirk Ferentz, where it's like, we've had a bad offense for 17 years in a row, but my kid's still coaching, so it's going to be fine. We're just going to stick with it. We're going to keep rolling with Brian. It's going to be great. When Ohio State had to make some tough choices, Ryan Day has made some tough choices. He did that when he came on, and it would have been very easy taking over for Urban Meyer to just keep everyone and just keep Taylor Johnson on staff and keep Bill Davis on staff and he didn't do that. He brought in some of his own guys, and some of them worked out and some of them didn't. And then you come in and you have a season like they did last year on defense, and really 2 years in a row the defense has been the issue. And everyone loves Kerry Combs, and Matt Barnes was seemed like he was pretty popular, and Al Washington was the kid who came home and the kid who made good, and and the results weren't what they needed the results to be, so out the door and bring in some new guys. And I think there is a shared vision for this program right now that you hear the word alignment a lot, and when you hear people talking about college football programs, and is the AD in alignment with the coach, and is there is everyone sort of on the same page? This seems very much like a case where Gene Smith and Ryan Day are on the same page. There very much is alignment there between those two guys. And in terms of the future of Ohio State football, that is probably the most important piece of that to me. Yeah,
so he will receive a 2-year contract extension that goes through the 2028 football season. His salary, his total compensation will go from $7.6 million to $9.5 million a year, with a base salary of a paltry $2 million, and the rest comes from sponsors and Nike and whatever else. But that shared vision that you talk about, I don't know if there are many athletic directors or presidents in this sphere who are as in tune to what the future of college sports and college football will be than Gene Smith. And Ryan Day is one of these guys who is the future of football in one way or the other, be it pro football or college football. Like, he's going to be around for a while. And having some semblance of what the sport is going to look like when, this goes through 2028. Like, who knows what things look like in 2028? Probably have like a 12-team playoff. Who knows how many conferences? But it has to be reassuring, at least, to know that I don't think either one of these guys, Gene Smith or Ryan Day, are going into the future blind. They know, like, things can change, but I think they also have an idea of what it will look like moving forward or in general. And so to have those guys having a shared vision, a same path, now how long they stay together, we will see, because this whole thing is changing. But there's confidence on both sides. Ryan Day has always spoken highly of Gene Smith. Gene Smith obviously thinks very highly of Ryan Day, or else wouldn't have given him the job. So it's, it will be interesting to see what this looks like in 2028, the entire sport. But he will also probably have another extension. You got to extend these guys every couple of years for recruiting purposes. You don't want to get to a point where other schools can come in and say, Ryan Day's not even going to be there when you're a senior. His contract only runs 2 more years. So you're always kind of chasing that graduating class. And so this will now put any of that out of the conversation. Tom, anything else on Ryan Day before we get to the bigger news of Chris Holtmann?
Yeah, I mean, I just think he is, to your point on the scheduling, having a contract pretty far out, like 2028, that's a long time away, but right now you're recruiting 2023s and 2024s. They just got a commitment from Dylan Raiola, quarterback for 2024. Dylan Raiola will be on campus, if he is on campus, for 5 years, 2024, 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028. Now, Dylan Raiola, as the number 1 player in the class, 5-star quarterback, is probably not a 5-year, fifth-year senior type of prospect, probably, but you are going to be recruiting players at other positions, and you will have some fifth-year guys in that class. So, yeah, you want to have, and some of this is symbolic, and we'll get into buyouts in a little bit, because this was just the release from Ohio State saying this is coming. This is not the actual contracts. So the number that you really want to look at is the buyout. We'll get to that buyout in a minute, but that's where the real job security is, because you see lots of coaches get their contracts extended, but it's extended, but the buyout doesn't change. You saw that with Jim Harbaugh last year at Michigan, where it's like, oh, look, he got a shiny new contract for several new years. The buyout is much smaller than it was before, so it's actually easier to fire him even though he has a longer contract. That's where you got to dive into the details of the contract a little bit. This has not been approved by the Board of Trustees yet, so therefore we can't FOIA it. But when we can, we will look into that, and we can give you a much better sense for exactly how much this means. But, if you're giving Ryan Day a $2 million a year bump, that I don't need to read too far into that to realize that, yes, this is a significant vote of confidence from Ohio State to Ryan Day.
And as my DMs blow up right now, let's talk about Chris Holtmann, who also received an extension. He received a 3-year contract extension that will, once this is all approved, that'll keep him on with the team through the 2027-2028 season. His salary increases by $500,000 and it goes up to $3.5 million. And I know there are some hot seat talks, and understandably, there have been some situations, some seasons that have not gone as well as fans would have hoped, as well as players and Chris Holtmann would have hoped. But here we are, and the idea of giving him an extension through 27-28, I think for some feels like, why? Next year is kind of a prove-it year for Chris Holtmann, and losing Malachi Branham and EJ Liddell early doesn't help. But that's life in the big city, as Urban Meyer would say. This is college sports. And so you still have to adapt or die. And it just, speaking for myself, I don't know that a contract extension here, I don't know that it was necessary. I don't think that Chris Holtmann was on the verge of leaving. And if he did, I don't know how many people would have been broken up by that. So it's interesting to me that they go ahead and do the extension. But Tom, as you said, what's the buyout say? That really determines all of this. Like, is this really a big deal?
Yeah, and sometimes you'll do, and again, I don't want to. I'm going to preface all of this by saying we haven't seen the contract yet. So when we see the contract, we will have a lot more information about how much it actually means. I'm with you. I don't think anyone was necessarily racing into town on a horse to sweep him away and go hire him for the Kansas job suddenly comes open, or the North Carolina job suddenly comes open. It doesn't seem like that's a real big concern right now. This is probably more of a recruiting move where, a 3-year extension that ends in 2028 means his current deal ended in 2025. So again, you want to count on your fingers if you want. You're recruiting 2023 kids right now, so your deal ends in 2025. You're still the 2023-2024 season means people who come in the fall of 2023. If your deal runs out in 2025. That's only 2 seasons. So you want to extend it for recruiting purposes. Then the question is, okay, how much is the buyout? And, what is the buyout on this? Is this something where at the end of this year, if they have a bad season and they decide they want to make a move, does it cost you 1 year of salary to buy him out? Does it cost him, is the whole thing guaranteed? We don't know that yet. So that's, I'm sure the reflexive response from a lot of people is going to be, why on earth would you give him an extension after he still hasn't made the Sweet 16 and all of the complaints you've heard online and in the stands at the Shot, I'm sure, over the last year or so. We don't have enough information to be able to tell you exactly how much this means yet. It's a bump of $500,000 a year, moves him up to $3.5 million a year. I mean, it's a nice bump. On the surface, that seems like that's a nice little vote of confidence for him. And, that's great. And then that will probably be a nice, it probably will not hurt in recruiting, certainly to be able to point to a contract extension and a raise. But, where the rubber meets the road is the buyout, and we don't have that information yet.
Yeah. And once we get that, I think we will both see our suspicions satisfied that the buyout isn't that much. But I do think that this also is kind of a move that doesn't hurt Ohio State at all, really, because if this team does go on and do something, now you've got your contract, you've got your coach locked in at a reasonable rate given the market. But yeah, it will also help recruiting. So it does allow him it gives him his best opportunity to fulfill the contract, which is what you want from any job, basically. So the other two, Kevin McGuff gets his contract, a new contract, going through the 25-26 season. Annual compensation rate of $1.05 million. Nick Myers, a lacrosse coach, will receive a new 5-year contract through the 2027 season. Steve Rohlik gets his contract extended, 2-year extension through the 2025-2026 season. Tom, anything else about any of this before we move on to some listener questions?
I think we've kept the listeners waiting quite long enough. Let's do some questions. First one from @Chris_Estes1. What's your sense of the coaching changes made on the defense? I understand Knowles' scheme is a shade different. I also understand players are adaptable. They have to be in this situation. We've also seen some attrition. How are they absorbing/adjusting to the new scheme?
Tom, tell me if I'm wrong here.
You're wrong.
I paused to let you to jump in there. But everything that Jim Knowles has said all spring is how happy he has been that how much work they've gotten done, how much of the defense they've been able to install. The players have taken to it. They are learning. They like it. Just imagine you being one of these defensive guys who have, I'm sure you've had to question the coaching that you've been receiving and the scheme that you've been playing. You see it's not working. And that you have somebody come in with a proven record. And then also to see that work in practice, that starts to encourage you. That gets you even hungrier. What he has said is the players have been so eager and so hungry to learn. And if you've got players who have that hunger, they'll pick it up really, really quickly. And they've done so far, it seems.
Yeah, all the feedback coming out of spring was very positive, which this is the time of year when all of the feedback is always positive. So you can kind of take that with whatever size grain of salt you want to. But when you saw it on the field during the spring game, it looked much more coherent. You didn't have a ton of big passing plays. You didn't have, running backs gashing people, even when they were doing the tackling portion of the game. It seems like, just as a matter of, a sort of a theoretical exercise, it seems like this should be something that carries over very well. He's working with probably slightly bigger, slightly faster, slightly stronger players than he was at Oklahoma State, and the results at Oklahoma State were very good. The results at Ohio State, the last couple of years, you're not trying to improve on, an A- defense. I don't want to throw out a letter grade, but there are several letters above where they probably graded out the last couple of years, where just okay would be probably room for, constitute improvement. And it feels like things are setting up for this to be much better than just okay this year for Ohio State. It might not be perfect, but it should be a pretty darn good defense. And based on what you've heard, again, which you can take that with for whatever it's worth, but also based on what we've seen, it feels like this is all sort of on track to be what they would, when you give, we're talking about salaries and coach contracts and all kind of stuff. When you give Jim Knowles $1.9 million, you have a very specific goal in mind. And it seems like they are on track for that. And, it doesn't seem like the buy-in is particularly difficult, getting the buy-in from the players, because there was some tension and there was some dissent on that defense at times last season. Inside the locker room with the staff, and you're changing who's calling the defense and moving people up to the box and down to the field. And that was not a smooth, easy, necessarily well-run defense for a big chunk of that season. So if you're seeing a lot more kind of, you get this is the guy who's in control. There is a big plan here. There is an overall plan here. We're seeing immediate results. The buy-in is just kind of naturally going to follow. All right, next one. And I'm going to make you go first on this one because you had more time to look at this than I did. And then you put I put a couple names down, and then you disqualified both of them. So you're gonna get to go first on this one, and I'll just kind of nod sagely and then throw out my names later. Who is on the Mount Rushmore of late bloomers, junior or senior year? That's from our buddy Josh at Propellerhead.
Yeah, and the reason I disqualified some of your names is you went with some redshirt sophomores. I said, hey, I didn't go with any redshirt sophomores. I did the work. I put the time in, and a junior would be fine. True junior would be fine. A redshirt sophomore, that's no. Especially because I'm going to guess because the examples I gave, like Marshawn Lattimore, redshirt sophomore, leaves outstanding, but that is he really a late bloomer? You start 1 year after, in your third year, and then you go, no, that's not late bloomer, Tom. I don't know how you could think that. Malik Hooker, no. Dwayne Haskins, no. They bloomed when they had their opportunity. Those are on-time bloomers. They're almost the exact opposite of late bloomers, although the exact opposite would be early non-bloomer. So aren't they the exact same? Almost. I'm
so confused. So I'll throw out a couple names, and the first one.
I thought I was going to go first.
Well, I'm going to throw out you paused. So did you want me to tell you were wrong again? I don't know. I feel like we've covered that ground. A couple names that came to mind. The first one immediately came to mind was Dan Wilkinson, which he was technically a redshirt sophomore because John Cooper made a very poor decision in 1991. Well, several poor decisions, but one of them was redshirting Dan Wilkinson, and he went from not playing at all to not playing much to number 1 pick overall in the NFL draft. Like, that's a pretty good overnight late bloomer kind of story. But he was a redshirt sophomore, so not technically correct. Curtis Grant, that linebacker who was a 5-star guy, kind of early 2010s, like 5-star prospect, didn't do much of anything, and then had a pretty good senior season. He jumped out to me as a possibility. I think you could probably have Eddie George in this conversation, where he, had the 1992 Illinois game and then didn't play a whole heck of a lot in 93 because he was behind Raymond Harris and Butler Benote. 94 had a pretty good, had a solid season in 94.
Over 1,400 yards.
Yeah, and then the Heisman in 95. So he's, does that constitute a late bloomer? Is that just someone who was waiting his turn? Those were some of the names, and I did have Dwayne Haskins down, which you have already told me does not count. So you can give me some other suggestions here from for names you thought you had down.
Here's one that did not make the list, or did not make the Mount Rushmore, so he's number 5. B.J. Sander.
He's a good one. Yeah, he was on the team
Award.
Yeah, but he was on the team for several years before he got a chance to
behind Andy Groom.
That's a good one.
He came on late, but here's my Terry Glenn.
Oh yeah, that's a really good one.
Yep. I think that was his 4th year rather than his 3rd year where he blew up, because there was the academic situation. Then he played in '94 a little bit. He had like 9 catches or 11 catches, but I don't think he was a 3rd year guy in '95.
I think 92. I think he might have been like a prop 48 in 92. So yeah, that's a good one. Whether it was his 3rd year or 4th one, that is a very, very good example here.
Will Allen, All-American as a senior, was a nickelback as a junior on that 2002 team. Obviously, he clinched the Michigan game with the interception, but playing behind Donnie Nicky and Mike Doss, and then they both leave, and he's an All-American in 2003. I think that's a fantastic one, Tom. Damon Arnett. Now, he started for 3 years, but how much better was he his final year when he came back for his 5th year compared to the 2 previous years where he was splitting time with a trio? He was very much a much better player his final year. Would you disagree with that?
He was a much better player. I think Terry Glenn is probably, just thinking through this, Terry Glenn is much more in the spirit of this exercise, where, in the same way, like Eddie George got better every year, but he's not really, he didn't kind of come out of nowhere, which is what I think, you sort of expect a gradual improvement. Damon Arnett was better throughout his career, but a multi-year starter. So, I realize I was the one who put out Eddie George's name, but I think he's, like Damon Arnett and Eddie George are probably not quite in the spirit of what he's asking here. But, he's definitely someone who made a significant improvement. Now, Jeff Okuda was significantly better every year, but I don't know that I'd call Jeff Okuda a late bloomer. I mean, you have a lot of, offensive linemen who you could probably, just by the nature of the position, who probably end up fitting that, 3rd, 4th year kind of guy. Michigan had a couple of those guys last year on their line. You could probably go through a bunch of Ohio State offensive lines and, pick out guys who, sat for 3 years and then took a bigger role in the line.
Darryl Baldwin would be an example of guy who ends up starting as a right tackle and doing very well. But yeah, the Damon Arnett is a wishy-washy one. Terry Glenn, not on the roster in 1992 because of Prop 48, I think, but or grades or whatever, but is listed on the 93 as a redshirt freshman. So that was his 4th year in 95. Here's one, Tom. I don't know if it's going to count, but I think it does because he definitely bloomed late. Ricky Dudley.
Ricky Dudley's a good one. His whole story was he started as a basketball player, and I don't think he was even part of the football team until he was.
I think 94 was the first.
94, year. Right? Yeah. Yeah, but he had played basketball for a couple of years before that. So yeah, he's a very good answer for this one, because he was, it wasn't even like the seed was in the ground the first couple of years. He was across the street at St. John, not at the Horseshoe. So yeah, that I think is much more in line with what we're probably looking for here.
Yeah, so I think we did it. Perfect.
Mostly you, but that's okay.
Per usual.
Next one from @Brock774-11489. Is there a hierarchy amongst the kickers? Will they all be on the team in September? And there's 3 scholarship kickers for Ohio State right now, which is way, way, way out of the norm. So yes, this is a. If you're wondering why would anyone care about the kicker depth chart this time of season or this time of year, it's kind of a weird situation. You've got Noah Ruggles, who is back. He was gone this spring and then came back. You've got Parker Lewis, who just transferred from USC, and you've got Jake Seibert, who kicked in the national championship game in 2020 and then didn't kick at all last year and is still there. I think I don't know if it's a hierarchy necessarily as much as you might have some different roles this fall. I think you're going to see Noah Ruggles probably be the short field goal specialists and to say take it out to 40 yards or something like that, and that'll be Noah Ruggles territory, PATs, field goals out to a certain distance. And then Parker Lewis is potentially the bigger leg guy this year, who could be, he's the 50-yard guy. He's the kickoff guy. Jake Seibert, we don't really know what to think about Jake Seibert right now. But I think the odds are you're going to have all three of those guys on the roster right now, because if you were looking at transferring, if one of those other guys was looking at transferring out, the May 1st deadline for immediate eligibility without a waiver has already passed. So if you were, if one of those guys was thinking, I don't see a role for myself on this team, I'm going to go somewhere else, you would assume they would have done that before May 1st. You can transfer anytime, but then you'd have to appeal for immediate eligibility. And as we saw with Paula Ienaoteote last year, that even when it should be a very easy, straightforward case, it's not always a very easy, straightforward case with the NCAA. So my assumption is you're going to see all three of those guys on the team. And based on what we're hearing right now, I think that's probably where those three guys all sort of shake out in terms of roles this fall.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then it also creates some competition, makes everybody better. Tom, as you know, iron sharpens iron. I do wonder the last time Ohio State had 3 scholarship kickers, and there's no reason to get rid of any of them right now because Ohio State's not over the limit. They're right there. They're 84, 85, so it's not like they need to get rid of somebody. Do you have to go back to the scholarship no limits of Woody Hayes' day when they had 3 scholarship kickers? I don't even know if they did. Were kickers guys that you would put on scholarship back then? It was certainly some, but I don't know if there's ever been 3 scholarship kickers on an Ohio State team. 2 has been more and more common over the years, going back to like Aaron Petrie and Ryan Pretorius and 2005, 6, that era, and of course Josh Houston, Mike Nugent, 2002 and on. And then we've seen it, last year, a couple years before that. And sometimes we even had a walk-on transfer come in and win the job. So, 3, shoot. Why stop there, Tom? I say go 4.
And, if you want to go back even further than the examples you gave, like back in the mid-90s, you had Josh Jackson, who was the sort of short field goal guy and was, sort of accurate but didn't have a real big leg. And then they had Mike Malfat, who was kind of the kickoff guy, achieved one of the great moments in Ohio State history against Notre Dame in 95, where he kicked the ball off and hit the pylon on the kickoff. And so if it had been 6 inches to the left, they would have gotten the ball on the 40. Instead, it was a touchback. So you don't see that very often. And every time you do, I think of Mike Malfat. So, you have seen it in the past. A little competition is not a bad thing. 3 is unusual, though. This is a little bit of an unusual situation where you didn't, Ruggles not being there for the spring. I think everyone kind of went, really? That's kind of weird. It's a little unusual. But, he's back. There was some concern that he might not be back. He is back, so that you can kind of cross that off your list of concerns. And, you have, like you said, you have the scholarships available. They're not looking to be, they're not looking to bring in 7 more guys. So you're going to have, if you're under the scholarship limit, you're not bringing in a ton of transfers. So you don't need those scholarships. So if you can give yourself a little insurance at the kicking position, if we have seen Ohio State in recent years. Blake Haubeil had a groin injury at one point. Blake Haubeil had COVID at one point. Like, you get to those backup kickers, and it has generally been walk-ons. It's been like Dom DiMaccio doing kickoffs or kicking in games, or Jake Seibert coming in and kicking in games. If you have a couple guys, if you've got a couple guys on that roster who you're really comfortable with, there are games that come down to kickers. The most recent game that Ohio State played came down to Noah Ruggles hitting a field goal at the end. So, that is, if you can buy yourself a little insurance there at a position that you might really, really, really need, that's not a bad thing. Just ask Nick Saban.
Yeah, yes, certainly. And I believe Parker Lewis now has 3 years of eligibility remaining if he wants to use his COVID-free year. Jake Seibert, I believe, technically 4 years of eligibility, considering maybe he redshirted last year and 2020 doesn't count. So there's some there, and Ruggles will obviously likely be gone after this year. So they'll be at 2 again unless somebody decides to move on or what have you. Tom, do we want to stop here? I know we've still got some more questions, but we're at a little over 30 minutes now. Do we want to call it a day and then save these for another show? There's some questions I do want to eventually get to. It's some questions that are impossible. I do not want to get to, for instance, ranking the 10 starting quarterbacks for the season opener this year based on the quarterbacks from 2001 through 2017. It's an exercise I do not want to partake in, but we will eventually, just maybe not today.
Yeah, I think waiting and spending a little more time thinking through some of these things would be probably a good thing. I do want to kind of spend a little more time on that one. And we have a show coming up as well on TV and talking about that. So that's always fun. So we've got a bunch of fun stuff to talk about. But Tony, remember when there used to be an off season and there wasn't any stuff to talk about? Somehow that's not a problem anymore. You know what? I'm fine with it. It's good.
You said we got a show coming up on TV, just so people are aware. Television times, kickoff times.
Yes.
Because I was confused. What we're doing? What now?
Yes. Sorry. I mean, we're on YouTube, which is even better than TV because we're on it.
It's on the internet now. So that will do it for this episode. I want to thank you all for the questions. Thank you for submitting those. That was a spur of the moment plea late at night saying, hey, I don't want to plan a show. Help me. And everybody did it. So thank you for that. As always, make sure to check out the rest of the shows here. Tom, sorry, forgot his name.
Once we've done a few of these shows together, this will get easier, but it's fine.
Tom, obviously the Morning Scoop. I was on there just recently one morning, and you can check that out every day. Right now, Monday through Friday, so not every day. Tom is taking some time off for himself. Mental health, we all need it. Kevin Noon, Big Me Kickoff. I haven't seen him for a while. He's been on vacation with Mark Givler doing their Southern Swing. Gives in the bank. Gives in the bank with Bill Green and Mark Givler. Congratulations to Bill Green on his hole-in-one. I mean, we've all done it, so it's welcome to the club. And of course, Alex Gleitman around the Oval. Check that out as well. He has guests on various writers, athletes, recruits, stuff like that. Check that out all on all of your podcast platforms of choice. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.